So today I'm with John, and John and his family are aboard a Lagoon 500. It's a 2009 boat called Wicked, and he and his 4 kids and assorted pets and spouse have been aboard boats for quite a few years. So we're going to learn a little bit about the Lagoon 500. So John, can you tell me a bit about yourself and how you came to be on your Lagoon?
Sure. Well, we started, we've been around boats for almost 20 years. My kids, I think the first time they went sailing, my oldest is 20, she was 4 months old. So we've had a boat ever since then. We started with monohulls, and then we migrated to catamarans. And we went to catamarans because with 4 kids, by that time, we needed room and space. So back in 2012, I sold my business, and we decided to take a year sabbatical. We looked for a boat. We found a 43-foot catamaran, and we went cruising the Caribbean. 3 years later, we outgrew that boat, decided what we really understood that by that point, after living aboard a boat for a while, what we wanted, and specifically looked for Lagoon 500. So back in 2017, we purchased our Lagoon 500 and migrated from one boat to the other. And we've been on her since.
Can you tell me what it was about the Lagoon 500, some of the specific attributes that really appealed to your family?
Yeah. So, and I think I would say this to kind of anyone. The more we spent time on boats and different boats, and before we had purchased any catamaran, we had chartered, I think, 6 different models over the previous 6-7 years. So even while we owned a monohull, when we go on vacations somewhere, we usually look to charter a catamaran. We use it as a way to learn about what we wanted. So we've tried the Leopards, the Fountaine Pajots, the Lagoons, the Katanas, and I think that's it. No, an Endeavor catamaran. We tried one of those for a while for one of our cruises, and there were attributes of each boat that we liked. Having lived on board a boat, it was very different than the 4 weeks we had spent cruising, which was the maximum amount of time on vacation kind of thing. And what we learned that we wanted a boat with lots of individual rooms or places to be, right? So with 4 kids on board, I still kind of run a business out of our home, in this case, the boat, and homeschooling and everything else. We knew we wanted bigger. Our 43 was too small. We wanted a salon where people could actually sit in multiple places. We wanted a kitchen where 3 or 4 people could stand in it. We wanted a pantry, which is kind of weird, right? But we realized that we wanted a place where you could store stuff. We didn't want to keep going into the bilges to pull stuff in and out on daily use stuff. And the more we looked around in different boats, the 500 series of the Lagoons, which we first saw, 10 years ago, was always out of our price range. And they had just gotten to the point, I think now, or 3 years ago, where they became somewhat affordable for us. And what we loved about it was just how big she felt, right? And then there's a lot of other attributes of that 500, but specifically when we were looking for a boat, we were thinking 45 to up to 60 footer. We wanted to find the biggest, smallest boat, if that makes sense, that we could get to. And the 500 was excellent at almost 29 feet of beam and 50 feet long. She has a gorgeously large, salon area. And that was our core attraction to her.
So she sounds like an amazing boat to live on, because I believe you have pets as well. So there's a lot going on and you've all got a bit of space. But tell me about sailing her. First off, we'll start with getting in and out of marinas. What's it like moving around on a boat that size? Do you need every kid on deck to give you a hand, or how do you handle her?
Okay, I think that's a great question. So about her size. So I think and moving around, and I'll talk a little bit more if you want later on about, the features we liked inside and their size for it, but yeah, maneuvering it, I can sail the boat on myself, right? So whatever boat we purchased, we knew that we wanted to be able to be shorthanded. So what's nice about the 500 was she's full electric, meaning all the winches are electric. She was, at the time when she was designed, she was Lagoon's flagship. That was another thing I kind of was looking for, because that's where Lagoon had designed and spend most of their effort trying to get, this is what we can do with a boat. That was back then. So when that boat came out, she was right at the top of their range. And she was the first of the large next generation boats that they had. So, and you asked about maneuvering. So I can sail the boat on my own. The only caveat I would say is docking and line handling, right? So unless the weather is perfect, I need someone to toss a line or grab a line. But maneuvering in and out was really easy. She's got her sail drives aft of the rudders, right? To protect the sail drives when you're underway. But that also means that she steers backwards quite nicely as well.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, the downside to that is that she also likes to eat lines from the rear.
Okay.
Right? So
it sounds like you've learned that the hard way.
Yeah, it's not that uncommon to understand that you're going to chew a line backing up if you're going to pay much attention. And it took me about 3 or 4 entrances before I kind of went, all right, we have to make sure there's nothing in the water. It was never our lines. To be fair, it was never our lines, but someone's lines were always there. So no, the 500 is very easy. It's a flybridge boat, which we love the idea of. She handles very well under power. We constantly, because we spent the last 2 summers in the Med has very fluctuating winds. So she will do 7.5 knots at sipping fuel at 1800 RPM all day long. She carries 1,000 liters of diesel. So she's got 1,000 nautical mile range under power alone. So I know it's not a sailboat thing.
No,
right?
But it depends on what you're looking for your family. It sounds like you have the boat. So tell me about her under sail. Have you been in rough weather? Have you crossed oceans? What's been?
No, we have not crossed. To be fair, we've not crossed any oceans with Wicked. When we purchased Wicked, she was in Turkey, right? Okay. And we've been as far as Gibraltar. So we've done the entire Med, and then we're heading back towards Turkey. So we'll stay in the Med for a little bit longer. We wanted an ocean crossing boat. And the reason that the 500 is always on our list is there are 150 of them made, and there are dozens that have crossed. So our boat was originally purchased by an Australian. They sailed it to Australia. From Australia, it sailed back to the Med, was owned by a Spaniard. Then he sold it to an Egyptian, and then we're the 4th owner, if you will. So our boat's been around the world already. Many 500s have been. So that was the kind of important thing. I didn't want to buy something that nobody's ever crossed on or anything like that. I wanted the ability to do it. Right. And
honestly, I think oceans are easier than coastal cruising a lot of times anyway. You're a lot further from the crunchy beds. Yeah. But so what kind of weather systems have you been in with her? How does she handle strong winds? Because I know you do get those in the Med.
Yeah, we've been in some significant blows. I think that the biggest difference that you would find in coastal or near coastal, which is what we've been doing, is that you don't get the giant rollers, right? You'll get steep seas, which is probably harder on you and the boat than the big ocean swells. So we don't have a lot of experience with ocean swells, which is not that big of an issue, but we do have a lot of experience in 35, 40 knots of wind when a Meltemi blows through or a strong, gust comes off the mountains in Europe. She handles perfectly great. So she loves that 15 knots to 20 knots of wind speed. We reef the first point at 20. Honestly, if we know that it's going to pick up, we'll reef at about 18, and then she'll comfortably sail all day long. She doesn't slap, and everything we've seen. We like that she's got a fly bridge, so it's rare to get any spray up there, even when we're pounding into the waves.
And I guess that gives really good visibility for, are you up there when you come into dock or?
Oh, always. Okay. Absolutely. And our previous boat was a Power Cat, and the Power Cat has a flybridge steering and an inside steering. What we quickly realized is we love this flybridge routine, right? It's beautiful visibility on the 500. It's got a big seating area, so all 6 of us can seat up on the fly bridge. We did upgrade and put a full Bimini on it because our experience in the Caribbean was that, we like being outside, but we don't want to be sun drenched the whole time.
Yeah.
So our solid Bimini covers the whole area up top. Your visibility is perfect. I can't see the rear corners when we back in. Okay, so that's actually one of the limitations on this boat and on many others, but you can't see the rears for it. So it came with cameras.
I was going to say you need backup cameras, but
it did come with backup cameras. I removed them because we never use them, and usually it's all about line handling. If I'm backing into a marina by myself, that's not going to happen because I can't do the line handling. So there's always someone on board, or if there isn't, then I'm not going to do that maneuver. Okay. We'll side tie somewhere and wait for someone to help us. But what's nice about being up on the fly bridge, you can jump to either side. I can literally take one stride to the left, look down one side and see the end of the boat, one straight to the right, look down the other side, see the boat. So it's not as limiting as you would think. Right. But when you're sitting there steering, you can't see the aft corners. That's what I would say for it. Back to answering your first question. So the boat's very easy to sail by yourself. Her beam makes it very stable. She has decent enough clearance underneath it. So we don't slap even in the short waves. We pound like anybody, pushing into 2 meter chop. It's horrible. So usually it's like, look, turn around, we're going the other direction for a while. But she doesn't, and it's very dry. The only negative I would tell you on the 500s and on most boats that have a fly bridge is how high the boom is. Right? So our 500, if you can imagine, if you're standing, the boom is above you. Right? Now the 500 is weird because when you're standing on the deck, the boom is about this level, right? So chest height.
Okay.
Right. And then you're stepping into like the steering area and that puts the boom overhead. Right. So you can't get to the sail bag in the steering station. And even if you're standing in the booms to here, you still can't get to the sail bag.
Oh, okay.
To reach it. So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to, so what do you do?
So, this is the whole trial by fire. I wish I had spoken to more 500 owners before we got on board, and that would have made our discovery much easier. So in our previous boat, after absolutely every day of sailing, we would zip up the bag and then the next day zip it open, go again. Now with the 500, our approach is if we're sailing for the week and we're moving every day, at night we don't zip the bag shut.
Okay.
Right. What we found, 2 things. So usually what we have now is our Bimini top it's a solid Bimini and it has walking areas. So we immobilize the boom with 2 straps on the back. So the boom's held in place, doesn't move at all. You climb up the Bimini, you can walk along it. And at that point, you're sitting over top of it. It's just like being on the deck.
Right. So, okay. So you find ways around it, but.
Yeah. So we upgraded our Bimini to alleviate the problem. You still have to climb on top of the roof to get to it, but at that point I have full access. And now because I have so many kids, usually we end up, and they all want to do something. So we usually end up putting one in a bosun's chair and setting them up. They have a good time and they unzip the bag. And, if we're stationary for a couple of days, we'll pull the halyard off it, tie the halyard to the side so we don't hear the banging, and then zip the bag up.
Right.
Everything drops into the sail bag anyways. So the real challenge ends up being to zip open and close the sail bag.
Right. Yeah. So you find your way. So tell me about her in light wind, because big boat, big heavy boat. What do you need to move? What kind of wind?
So our history was, so my first boat was a Swan. So she was a nice deep keeled, very responsive boat. Our next boat was a Charter 43 monohull, which didn't point very well, but still moved and it felt like a sailboat and it was great. Our next boat was a Power Cat, and I'm like, this is awesome. All I do is set the throttles and don't have to worry anything about it. Then we went to the 500 because we wanted ocean crossing range and we wanted a bigger boat. And 500 motors great, right? And sails significantly well, and I'll put my caveat there, which means usually I didn't go sailing if the wind was under 10, 12 knots because I didn't want to do 3 or 4 knots,
Okay.
right? So what we found, and then we met some cruising friends who happened to be a sailmaker, and he was on a Fountaine Pajot 46, and he's like, John, you should sail that thing. It should have great sailing ability. I'm like, yeah, if it's 15 knots, we'll go 7.5. He's like, no, you should do it in 10. I'm like, I'm not sailing in 10. We're going to do 4, right? He goes, well, you can get 5, right? And we sailed from the coast of Spain to Majorca. He and I did, and in somewhere between 8 to 10 knots of wind, we were pointing 60 degrees to 45 degrees. She was handling well. She was easily doing 5 knots. So I think if you want to go sailing, right, she sails remarkably well in the lighter stuff. She's hard to tack like most catamarans are,
Yeah.
right, especially in the light winds. But, we were comfortably doing 50%, half the speed of the wind.
Oh, nicely done. Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about, so she moves, she's comfortable. Tell me a little bit about the inside and what you like about it and how it works for your family, how the layout works.
Yeah. So I don't know if this is accurate or not, right? So I believe the 500 was the last of the liveaboard designs that Lagoon put together, right? So I'll make that claim. I don't know if that's true or not.
Versus charter, you're thinking?
Versus the charter market.
Okay.
There are features on the 500 that make her not great for charter, right? And there are features on those features that don't make her great for charter make her excellent for living aboard, right? So in the 440s, which is kind of the 500's kind of little sister, it's like a 70% of a 500, is very similar, right? So what we like in the 500 as far as the features is the salon is much bigger than you would expect for a 50-foot boat. So we've been on Privilege's 585, which was the other boat we considered, or a Privilege 615, and our salon is bigger than theirs, right? And it has a step-down kitchen. So the kitchen is actually offset only by about 6 inches, one step lower. So you can be sitting in the kitchen and be kind of eye level, looking out the boat nicely. You can be talking to the people who are sitting in the salon. Our salon table seats 8 comfortably.
Oh, nice.
We've had 14 people for dinner inside the boat, right? 4 people cooking at the same time. The boat came with 4 refrigerators from the factory, a dedicated freezer and 2 fridges, and then a bar fridge outside. This is all standard kind of from the design. What we like, there's, I think, probably 3 characteristics that make the 500 unique, and I haven't found another boat that's very similar to it. We like the asymmetric cockpit outside. So unlike most charter cats where you want to be able to get out and into the water and back and forth easily, we only have one way in and out. So we are captive. So it's an asymmetric design, but it's very enclosed, which makes our cockpit area very safe, right? There's kind of like a door to get out. And then when the screens are down, we have a separate room with a nice table with big U-shaped seating that can seat 8 people on the outside. That we liked an awful lot more. You can have 6, 7 people sitting for dinner outside and people still coming and going, not being interrupted.
Right.
Right. Most of the catamarans, modern catamarans, they're much more, you kind of walk through the back to get to the outside. So I know that wasn't a popular thing in the charter market, right? For the 440s and the 500s. But for us, that is a great. I mean, immediately we get into our cockpit, we take our life jackets off because you can't fall out. You can't fall out the back, right? It feels very safe and secure, which I think makes it important for crossing. It makes it important with smaller kids. Ours are a little older now, but she would have been a perfect boat with toddlers because there's no way out.
Right.
If you think of it that way. So we love the cockpit. The salon, I told you, is large. And then the other thing we really liked is this boat had a pantry. I don't know how else to explain it, right? So because the front cabins, the beds are over the bridge decks, right? So you step down into the hull, and on the port side hull, there is a good 10-foot room, the hallway, right, between the front and the back. In that 10-foot room is our built-in 2 refrigerators and our laundry facilities and a big counter that's 6 feet long where you can stack all your stuff on top of. And there's cabinets on the inside and there's cabinets underneath. And that's where, if you've been on boats and you've lived on boats, this is, I showed my wife this. She's like, oh my God, this is the boat for us.
Yeah, you're
right?
the boat for everybody. You'll have all the things that nobody else can have the space to carry.
Correct. And it's not, well, there's a lot of space on this boat. What we found, it was just someone that thought there was like, yeah, well, you're going to want the blender out and you're going to want the toaster and you're going to want, the bread maker, and you want to be able to get to these things easily. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Right. So we really love that it did that. And we also like the fact that most boats, when they say they have a master's cabin, they're talking about an owner's hull. They dedicate the entire hull of the boat to the owner. The 500 in the 4-cabin layout has a very large owner's cabin. So it's kind of like a regular cabin plus what would have been the pantry area dedicated to the owner. And in our master, we actually have a full sitting desk, which is great to work on. Most of them have sofas. So you got this kind of owner's version with a dedicated large area for the owner without giving up that 4th cabin.
Right.
So
the kids have the space they need. I know some of your kids are older now, but you had bedrooms is it a bedroom for every kid then?
The 500 came in a 3-cabin model, which is a dedicated hull, 4-cabin, which is what we ended up with, and a 5-cabin, which had a smaller, they made the master smaller and they added bunk beds. So we wanted the 4-cabin because we wanted the big master. So we have a 4-cabin model that gave, and 2 of my kids shared. Okay. So as one of them is, one's at university, one's gone off to school. So I'm down to only 2 kids on board. Now they have dedicated cabins and a guest cabin.
It'll be the sleepover boat.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
And I would tell you what we liked on the 500 and we continue to like the more we spend time on her. It's not common for me to have boat envy. So with our previous boats, there was always, when you went somewhere or saw something at a boat, oh, I'd really like that, or I really enjoy this, or we should look at a new boat because this one does that. I don't have that with the 500, right? So it's not like something that's missing. Maybe her transoms are dated, so they're the older style transoms that don't have a big beach in the back or a big landing area. But what I do particularly like about that boat is that the boat seems to have decent bones, right? So you see lots of people, it's an active community, especially on the 440, because there's so many more of those, doing modifications and adding to the boats and modifying their transoms and putting different stuff inside. So, the boat wasn't built as a kind of throwaway, right? And the second we could see more and more of that I was doing the research and we're like, okay, this is perfect. So this boat has a community associated with it. People are investing money to keep it. So you talk to many of the 500 or 440 owners, rather than buying a new 450 or a new 52, they would put money into their existing boat to upgrade it, right?
So
we
speaking
feel
about
as competitively or comparably to the new 52s, probably a little bit better.
So speaking of upgrades, are there any projects that you see yourself doing on the boat, or is there anything that you would change, or are you pretty happy with how it is?
So remember, we treat our home as our boat as our home. So to answer your question, we upgraded all our electrical systems to lithium. So we have a full lithium battery system on board now. We got rid of all the propane. So we're a single fuel boat. So we only run diesel. So all our cooking is electric. We have solar panels. And so our big upgrade since buying the boat was the lithium battery system and all the electric cooking that went along with it, and then our large Bimini, which really increased our quality of life. I would like to kind of make some changes to carry a larger dinghy in the back. But today, I mean, we're a very active family and we like being the boat where everybody gets to. So that was
Right.
kind of the home we grew up with. So all the kids were always at us. So on our boat, we carry, dive equipment for 6 people. All my daughters are certified. We have a dive compressor on board. We carry 2 TAS sailing dinghies. So we have 2 12-foot sailing dinghies out
Right.
here with us. So when we're at anchor, we splash the sailing dinghies and the paddle boards and everything else. So, the 500 just swallows all of that stuff up. Uh, and that I think was part of our piece. It doesn't sail. I can sail it as effectively as I could the Katana 47 that I was on for many years.
Right.
That I love that boat, but I would never give up my 500 for it. Right.
Okay. Which is pretty much what I was going to say. If you were going to swap her for any other boat, is there anything else out there that you'd swap her for?
It's interesting because boat people always keep looking for the next boat. So I keep going through that. I really like these the Garcia Explore Cat 52s that are out there.
Okay.
Right? I like their idea. So
Yeah,
when you
yeah.
look at the design, I'm like, I wonder if they could build a 500 version in aluminum.
Right. So you could go to the South Pole and check out all the icebergs and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know that I would ever sail in those areas. I just like the idea of it. I don't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that makes sense, right? So I think from the reality of living on our boat, the 500 is a big boat, right?
Yeah.
The 440 is a very popular, smaller version of it, which shares many of the similar attributes. My next upgrade to it, will more than likely be just comfort of living. We want to change out its refrigeration, to put modern fridges in it. We're still in the original 10-year-old fridges that are in there, which are fine, right? And we will probably switch to very high efficient, home units, right?
Yeah.
That are built today. They're more efficient than what we have. We're fully air conditioned and heated. I mean, there's very little that's missing on our boat. And I mean, as I said, I mean, I don't have boat envy, which is rare.
That's
I'm
pretty
not
cool.
looking, what's my next one?
No, that's awesome. That seems like a really great place to wrap up. And I really appreciate hearing about the boat.